Hello and welcome back. This is the next video in the certification called Sustainability Climate Risk or SCR. In this video, chapter 46 to 50 of this certification would be discussed. This is the presentation outline. Let's study them one by one. So, for mental health and climate change, there are some environmental context to it. These are access to mental health. So, how much access to mental health is available to the human beings, that is discussed here. What is the status of disaster behavioral health planning, which is usually done by the municipal governments or the federal governments? Also, how the risk messaging is done, and if the risk is expressed, how the communication method would be implemented. The social and environmental factors, they could be like pre-existing mental and behavioral health conditions of that particular individual. What is the social economic status of that individual, whether that person is having a stable family or not, whether this individual is able to engage with community at large or not. Also, what is the prior trauma exposure of that particular individual and how resilient that person is to climate change. Now, there are different drivers. The first driver is temperature. There is a causal relationship between temperature and aggression, precipitation extremes. So, as the rainfall changes, there could be change in mental health. There could be some issues in the individual. Another is the effect of extreme weather events, which could lead to eco-anxiety, that is slow effect of climate change on oneself and family. Sea level rise could also have effect, just because there are so many cities which are near the sea. Now, what are the exposure pathways? So, what is the severity of that particular extreme weather event? That would be necessary to evaluate the effect. The second is about the climate influenced illness, injury, and deaths. So that can affect the mental health of the individual. How much the damage is done to the homes or livelihoods, that can also have effect on mental health. Also, level of exposure to all of these above would lead to mental health problems. The mental health problems could be distress, grief, substance abuse, PTSD, post-traumatic growth, etc. Now, as an individual, what can you do? So the first is to build your own resilience. You need to be resilient yourself. You need to foster optimism. You need to be always positive about the things. Otherwise, that would you won't be able to counter the climate change effects. Active coping, and you need to self-regulate yourself. There needs to be a personal meaning to your life. What do you want to achieve? And if climate change affects your particular location, you should not be afraid of that. There should be a personal preparedness, how you would plan in case of climate change. You need to be ready about it, and you need to plan some activities based on that. As an individual, we are all social human beings, and we need social networks. So how much we are involved in it, that is necessary. Another is how our connection to the loved ones, which is parents, families, and other role models. What is the connection to the place that we are living in, that would also help us in climate change. Also, culture is another factor that can help in reducing mental health problems. For communities, they can do these things. So the first is to have a mental health infrastructure. They can also facilitate social cohesion, in which through community design they can do that. They can train the people how to respond to a disaster. Also, they can provide clear information and can reduce disparities between various vulnerable groups. vulnerable population needs to be given special attention. Also, when the disaster is mitigated, they need to provide a fast response and need to have a post-disaster plan. One of the problems with communities is that they don't provide equitable and transparent distribution of resources, and if you can do that, that would always help. There needs to be cooperation and social cohesion between the group, and there needs to be some opportunities for meaningful action. Now, there are some common challenges in building urban climate resilience. So, as you know, around 40% population is within 100 kilometers of oceans. So, they are always prone to flooding and erosion. They can construct seawalls, levees, setback, embankment, expanded drainage, etc. Resilient construction is necessary for climate change. So there is innovation and experimentation for climate-friendly building codes and zoning rules. These urban parks, permeable surface, walkways, etc. can be helpful in resilient construction. Wastewater management. So there is a big problem of salination of groundwater. Also, flooding, drought, and storms are happening, and they can be converted into opportunities by investing in rainwater harvesting system, water treatment plants, etc. China has developed Sponge City. Another is energy resilience. So our electricity grids are vulnerable to heating, flooding, storms, and winds. With increase in temperature, it would reduce grid efficiency. So solutions could be distributed generation, electricity storage, smart grids, etc. Another is transportation system. So the bridges which are made of reinforced concrete or tunnels. There needs to be extensive network of EV charging stations. Pedestrians and bike sharing needs to be promoted so that less energy is consumed. Communications. Most of the communication cables are made of metal and plastic, which are susceptible to heat. So you can use fiber optics, multiple point of connectivity, etc. Soft infrastructure. So health outreach programs, education efforts, social safety net programs could be implemented for that. So now the financing about it. So there is a direct government financing. Government finance some amount in urban climate resilience. Another is municipal bond market. Usually it is prevalent in US. Green bonds are coming up, and some of the amount is used for urban climate resilience as well. Land value capture strategies. So the government can sell the land to private and can reap the benefit for urban climate resilience. Another is to go for public-private partnership or private finance initiatives. So this is another way to do that. There are international financial institutions who are helping in climate adaptation. Another is the role of insurance. So insurance has been can be used as a gateway to climate resilience. However, there is a moral hazard problem. So moral hazard is that if you are facing a storm or flood, how you would like to resolve it. Insurance companies could diversify into areas which are climate resilient. In the some soft infrastructure, credit worthiness is one of the big issues that is facing them. Now the next topic, which is monetary natural capital assessment. So natural capital is defined as the world stock of natural assets that could include geology, soil, air, water, etc. They are dangerously degraded by human activity. Assessment is the process of evaluating impacts as well as dependencies and to integrate natural capital into decision making. Usually governments are doing it, but many private companies are starting to can do that as well. Puma was the very first company that did it in 2011. These are the various steps in it. The first is to frame the problem. So it is to inform decision making and identify risk. There needs to be a comparative tool for diverse value to calculate monetary value. Natural capital costs currently are external to business, but they need to be incorporated in it. You can also enhance communication and company reputation. So by using natural capital assessment, so there are reputational benefits for the firm. Also, it can be used as a broader sustainable vision that can be complemented to the existing approaches. The next topic is scope and measure. So business-wide approach is needed. In this, GHG gas is included, which is the biggest natural capital cost. Mineral energy extraction, flood protection, knowledge creation, and spiritual values can be the categories. The next is measure and value. So data availability is always a big concern in it. The methods that are used are not so mature and then needs to be updated from time to time. There is higher certainty in it, and due to this there is less credibility, which leads to lack of internal support. Therefore, you require substantial resources. The last is to apply, which is to communicate, collaborate, and have stakeholder engagements. Firms need to integrate natural capital in decision making and risk identification. There needs to be earlier trials that can help in improving NCA natural capital assessment methodologies. The next topic, which is assessing the economic impact of Arctic. So there has been a huge cry to exploit Arctic for oil and gas reserves, and the thing is that majority of countries as well as firms are thinking about the economic cost, but there are other effects as well. So let's study them one by one. So about economic opportunities. Due to restricted geographical access, there are environmental concerns about the Arctic. You can have short-term benefit of oil and gas extraction, but long-term it would be not so beneficial. Exploitation of Arctic is not uniform, due to which fossil fuel cost is increasing, whereas renewable cost is decreasing, and hence there is no need of fossil fuels. There is lack of infrastructure there. Also, due to the remoteness of region, it is not possible to bring the infrastructure easily. The second is the direct regional impact. So there are changes in wildlife as well as plant species. As the permafrost is thawing, this is threatening coastal settlement, the infrastructure, release of legacy pollutants such as methane, forest fire increase, etc. There is also increased risk of late seasonal fires in tundra region. Carbon, which is CH4 or methane, is getting released, and there is change in vegetation patterns as well. If during the oil extraction there is a spill, then it could lead to a high environmental risk. There needs to be a satellite account for production and consumption of subsistence facility as per UN recommendations. What are the indirect effects? So North Atlantic Ocean circulation is changing due to freshwater discharge from Greenland ice sheet. This abrupt release of methane from gas hydrant could result in thawing permafrost. There could be knock-on effects. So knock-on effects could be due to shifts in commodity prices as well as trading patterns. There could be potential gains from shipping, but it can be offset by climate-related costs in Africa as well as in India. So existing research based on Arctic exploitation discusses about just the opportunities. We need to consider the threats as well. There needs to be transdisciplinary approach for integration of climate change, climate science, economics, and policy studies. Now the next chapter was about beliefs about climate change. There were some hypotheses that were discussed there. The first hypothesis was about direct experience with a flood. So it was surveyed in US. However, there is little evidence based on that. There is a white male effect, which is white male are not experiencing flood. Also, education level persistence is there. The next hypothesis, which is neighborhood and community level flood experience. So there is a perception of community flood damage that is significantly associated with climate beliefs. The third one, which is about temporal constant component. So it is true. It has been found that people 3 years after have strong belief than after 4 years. Also, climate change belief affect after an extreme event weakened during time. The next hypothesis, which is based on demographic, political affiliation, and worldviews. So there is some correlation that Republicans usually perceive less climate change. Also, college graduates are positive about climate change. The fifth hypothesis, which is about flood risk perception. So in that, it is found that political affiliation is not that significant. Flood risk perception is higher in near future than in the later future. The next topic, which is about maladaptation. So maladaptation is the intended adaptation resulting in increased vulnerability for other groups and sectors. As you can see, it is due to ignoring science, or it could be due to favoring some particular group, or it could be due to short-termism versus long-termism. Another could be the path dependency or lock-in effect, or there could be relocation due to more threatening conditions. Let's study some of them. So for droughts, you can see that due to droughts there would be extraction of groundwater, which would lead to less water, and this could lead to water scarcity. For agriculture in Zimbabwe, it was seen that they started using pesticide, and this created a worse condition for them. For health, antibiotics was used for cows, and this resulted in release of more methane. So the effect is not there. For cities, in Florida, they need to recharge and maintain pressure against saltwater intrusion. Bangladesh has not Bangkok has not adapted the flood-prone planning, which has resulted in it being a flood-prone area. Cities are not doing their bit in adapting to climate change, and this is leading to more and more problems. The next topic, which was about hydraulic fracturing. So there are problems with hydraulic fracturing. Discharge and disposal of fracking wastewater can lead to environmental contamination. Fracking wastewater contains salt, heavy metals, and naturally occurring radioactive elements, which could be disastrous for the environment. Also, injection of fracking fluid into wells allow gases and liquids to contaminate aquifers, which are reserves for groundwater or freshwater reserves. Wind, sand, and chemical injected at high pressure can create fracture in the cell, which can lead to disastrous effects such as earthquakes. So these were the topics that were discussed in this in these chapters. This is the end of Sustainability Climate Risk Certification series videos. I hope you like this video. Subscribe to this channel, like, share and comment, and we will meet soon.